Midtown is by far one of my favorite maps in Overwatch 2, and let me tell you, it's for a great reason. 1, the soundtrack slaps, and 2, there are a lot of great rat spots for Ana. Flanking on this map has incredibly insane potential even as a support, but it definitely takes some time to learn, and that's why I'm here. We're going to start on defense on this map and work our way back to attack just because defense is a little bit more interesting to start with. This video is not the one way that you should be playing Midtown, but rather a way to think about and interact with the map on different bases depending on the comps that you're playing, as well as your enemy. So without further ado, let's start it all off with first point defense. Alright, to start off, we're going to do what I would consider the default hold for the first point on defense of Midtown. First, what you're going to do is you're going to actually want to take the staircase into this building that's to the right of the point, which gives you actually a lot of vantage points over this first defense. Now, I know a lot of people like to hold on the other side of that subway train over there, which we will get to after this spot that I show you guys, but I would like to argue that honestly this spot's a little bit better because you can actually shoot at point here if the enemy team does try to take that high ground over there that I'm just pinging, which is actually super nice that I can do that now, by the way. You have all of this space here to spam them as they rotate this way, and you also have this window right here to also take some high grounds and really take advantage of this positioning. When I was in PUG, this was actually the first time that I saw this position being used against me, and it's really strong to at least start here. Now, the things that you do have to look out for, because this is not a tried and true gonna work every single time for you kind of scenario. We saw this in Overwatch League actually of the first weekend. I don't remember who it was, but an Ana was up here, and they actually got caught out because it was Reiner that actually jumped through this window and forced the Ana out here. Because the Ana only had a Zarya, there was no real way for the Zarya to help her peel from this situation up here. Now, if that Zarya on my team is a Winston and could actually match Reiner right here, it wouldn't be that big of an issue, but if they do have a monkey on you and you don't have anything that's going to be able to help you fend off that monkey up top, you're going to have to actually get forced out here where you can rotate to maybe back here on this side of the point, or maybe you actually rotate to your team up there. Maybe you have to take a not as advantageous position here, or even on the other side of the point. So there's a lot of things that can go into this position that you need to be aware of. But now let's actually look at another place that you can play. If your team does insist on playing up here, I think this is an okay spot to start out, but there's a few things that actually I would say against it. While you do have the time to spam through here, you also have to be aware of the rotation that the team can take through this space here. So you can look for an anti-nade here to allow your team some time to actually rotate through here into this little subway thing. I'm saying here a lot, but the problem is with that is that then they get the entire foothold of point right here. So I mean, at that point you'd have to play up here and actually get some vantage points here onto the points, so you can maybe look for an anti-nade there. The problem is by that point they probably already have a tick. So what I would say is if your team does want to play up here, I would probably play inside the train. So one, you have a little bit more cover, and when they do inevitably actually rotate below you, you can get a much better anti-nade here since it's only 3 seconds that you have that effect active, which allows for your team to actually pounce on that much more efficiently than if you were somewhere else. Alright, so moving on into second point here, you're not going to be able to really get a whole lot of cool spots off the rip because, you know, they just took the point and you probably died in a spot where it's only going to let you take this first high ground here. So second point high ground is definitely something that I do want to cover within this video and kind of like how you can play around it. So realistically, teams can go either through this to this little area over here to push through this hallway inside to kind of get you from behind. They can take this high ground here, which is a difficult jump to hit, or they can take it up the staircase here rather. So it's not really it's pretty intuitive actually how you're going to set up to really take a defense here. It's going to really come down to just kind of chilling and trying to take some poke damage here to maybe get some ult charge there, or maybe rotate to this pillar here when they already make that rotation over to the hallway over there. So you can really just look for some poke damage, which is something that's really important to get your ultimate really fast as on in Overwatch 2. But let's actually move into something after you have won that first fight, or maybe you've won the second fight on Midtown here. It's very important that you actually switch things up here because you have a lot of opportunities to find big grenades to really just, you know, burn down a fight right before it even started for the opposing team here. So this spot right here, which I did just show you, actually let's show you how I did that again I know that was pretty fast for a lot of people. So the way I typically try to do this is there's a little spot right here. You can actually see the divot in this sign. You can jump up on this, jump up again on top of it to be on the top of this little, I don't even know what to call this, like a little sign thing. And then you can make the jump over to this scaffolding here, and then to the bar right here, which leaves you very, very concealed from the enemy. I know I mentioned this in a lot of my videos last week, but I know there's probably going to be a few new people here, so it's really nice to actually explain how I got to this spot. But I mean, from this spot right here, we got a lot of options. Like I said previously, teams could come through here, they could come through to the scaffolding there, or they can try to make a rotation over to that through that construction building right there. So you pretty much have two of the three rotations the team could possibly make. You have an anti-need for it. Usually teams like to take scaffolding first, as they can take that fight right to them onto the high ground, but sometimes they do make that rotation over there inevitably, which you will just be able to honestly just walk back over to the high ground there, or even just stay here once they've made that full rotation, which is why I really like this spot, because it's very versatile. And I mean, you can look for a nade there, you can look for a nade when they're up here. I'll probably show a few clips on stream, or not my stream, on screen while I'm actually talking about this, but the important thing that you do is that you don't do this every single fight on defense, because if you do this every fight on defense, they're just going to catch you and you're going to die extremely easily, even though this is a really good spot. So, let's show you the next spot. So another spot that I do like to hold actually is the construction building, and there's a few ways that you can play this. Typically, I like to play this building if I need to get creative again, if my team is kind of struggling to take those fights aggressively. After I've already used the Ana rat spot up there, or if a lot of people start looking at that spot, you're going to have to switch things up. And this is just one of the ways that you can do it. So right here, typically what they would do is after you actually do this spot for like 1 or 2 fights, they're gonna turn their back to this spot and really look to tunnel vision where you were before, which allows you to just kind of sit in this little corner where it's really hard to see you, jump out when your team says that they're at the scaffolding looking for you, and look for an aid there, and maybe have a Winston jump from the high ground onto this position here. It's very, very aggressive, and it's a lot harder to pull off than the rat spot there, because I think it's a little bit more expected. I mean, I feel like a lot more people will be able to walk up this high ground and just, you know, scout you out, which is very, very easy to do if you are going to attack from there, which it's not as foolproof, as opposed to playing on this high ground here where, I mean, no one's going to be looking at that high ground. They're all going to be looking up there and make sure they're not getting poked, and not going to be looking for an Ana that's sitting in a corner here. One last thing for the second point of Midtown, which by far is one of my favorite maps in all of Overwatch 2. This point specifically is so much fun. But an important thing that you really have to understand is, you know, that rat spot, it's not going to work every single time. Sometimes, even if you do get that big anti-nade, you're still going to probably lose one of those fights eventually. So it's really important when you're coming back from spawn here, if you do actually end up dying, that you understand how you can get back up on that high ground and really play it through this position. A lot of people think the only way that you can actually play this is through this hallway, which is very, very dangerous. You will die if you play in this hallway consistently, because soldiers are really good here, Genjis are really good here, yada yada yada. But something that you do want to look out for, though, however, is how you can actually rotate through here. So there's actually a little mailbox you can jump on here. You can actually jump on this as well, and then jump up on this little corner here to give you full access to this high ground for pretty much for free. And you can also avoid all of this inside space here that's very, very dangerous. So let's say that maybe a team is rotating through here trying to get to your team on the high ground because you got picked early and they want to go through hallway. You see them doing that, you peek out here, you're like, well crap, I'm probably going to die here. So they're going to either have to commit to you here, or they're going to have to commit to your team through here. And if they want to do the latter of those two choices, and they try to just ignore you because they think you're not going to be able to catch up, you can just jump up on here and nade their team, and bam, that's pretty much a free fight win. You didn't really miss out on anything. On the flip side of things, if the enemy team does decide to run you down, which they're probably going to do if they're on a brawl composition and they see a support like that, you could really just look to jump up here and nade and then run away. Because when you actually do that, not all of their team is going to be able to push together on this corner. It's just too small. So, I mean, if you're thinking like a Zarya, a Genji, a Moira, a Lucio, they're not all going to be able to chase you down at once, and being able to splash that's going to do huge amounts of damage for your team. So, I mean, keep in mind, it also goes both ways. You can jump up on this plant, you can jump up on this here, or I'm pretty sure you can just jump up on the corner. You don't even need to prep yourself up at all. It's just a very important corner to kind of understand because you can do a lot with this. So I mean, keep that in mind, and we'll get on to a little bit more of the aggressive things you can do on second point at the later half of the video. So 4.3 of Midtown, it is by far one of the, I guess, slimiest points. There's a lot of like weird nooks and crannies that you can work your way through, but not a whole lot of them are very useful. So I would say the most important thing that I do have to highlight is the elevator room onto the best high ground of the third point here for defense. That's really important that you understand how to get to it and also really how to play this effectively, because you can get on this high ground, but you could arguably play it really poorly if you don't understand how you should play it. I originally wanted to start playing here because I was like, wow, well, if the enemy team wants to rotate through here, it's such a free answer, right? See, that's the problem, because it's very easy for you to do that because it looks like you're getting a lot of value, but it's also simple for the enemy Genji to just kind of dive on you, Monkey to dive on you, anything to dive on you, to be honest. It's very difficult to really pull that off in the long run. Meanwhile, while this position might be a little bit more aggressive, if you're trying to shoot into them here, you do have an escape point at all times if you do choose to do that to keep yourself alive. Meanwhile, here you're kind of stuck. And in the grand scheme of things, do you really miss out on the anti-nade here? You do remain a little bit more exposed to maybe a Widowmaker that's down there, or anyone that's over there. But I mean, over here you also just as exposed because you still have to peek out of this corner. I mean, maybe you could jump and like try to hit a nade there, but that's only going to hit that side and not the closer side. So I think this high ground here is just really important to hold. In terms of the rest of defense, this one's going to be pretty quick. You just have to keep in mind that wherever you're going on defense here is not always going to be safe. So like train, you don't get you get a lot of safety, but not a lot of viability. Right here, you get a lot of viability. The problem is, if you go too far, you're actually going to be visible from that high ground immediately. And I'm sure this is going to happen where you're going to get picked off once by a Widowmaker up there, and it's going to feel terrible, and you're going to think this spot is bad. But that's not the case. It's really important that while you do have all these vantage points, and you want to make sure you're checking back there and over there, and maybe in that corner there, or to the right, so you're not getting flanked. It's very important that you're watching up there the whole time to make sure that a Widowmaker isn't coming from up there to get a sneaky little pick, because even though that hasn't happened to me yet, I can just feel like people are going to look anywhere but right there, because it's very deceiving. You think you're going to get blocked from there, but it's not going to work that way. So now that we are done with defense, we're going to move on to the offense, but before we do, please do hit the like and subscribe button. One, it helps the channel out a ton, and two, it lets me know subconsciously that you guys like this content and would want to see it for other maps, like New Queen Street, Coliseum, as well as Circuit Royale, and any other maps that Overwatch 2 does release in the future, especially from the lens of Ana. But let's move on to that first point attack like we were talking about earlier, that a lot of people do like to take this high ground here. So, I mean, one answer that's pretty conventional that a lot of people do like to use. I wouldn't say it's conventional, but I'd say it's pretty common that a lot of people like to use. So they like to just throw the Ana nade up here, try to maybe get a Doom Punch into it so that your team can engage up there. While it might not be super practical or work all the time, if they do leave this position or they just gave it up to begin with, you can then take this very advantageous position on Ana to force out maybe anyone that's over there, maybe a soldier that's somehow gone into high ground over there, as well as really catch this Ana when she does get dove by your monkey if you're playing that, or Doomfist, through this window here. Reasonably, the Ana is probably going to walk out here if they don't get peel, and then it's just an 8 away or a shot away from pretty much just confirming that kill. Now, if your team doesn't want to do that, and they have a really strong composition, like maybe a brawl up here while you have a dive, and you don't want to take the fight up here right away, you can look to rotate around this map. The first point on this map does allow you to do this very easily with all the alleyways that it does that maybe you wouldn't use in a normal playthrough, but if you are playing in a structured environment, going through here and maybe just forcing them off of this high ground, not even going to point right away, but rather forcing this high ground off of the enemy, so that, I mean, this is a very strong position. Because at that point, the entire enemy team is up there, and you've just flipped the map. Now you're on defense, and they're on offense, but you have the advantage because the point is slowly ticking up, and they have to engage on you. You have your on this high ground, while they're over there with their tail between their legs. Bam! Easy nade there. Maybe you built nano because you lost the first 2 fights. You nano your monkey, bam. Game over. Super easy, super simple. Move on to second point. So second point offense, we've kind of already gone over, but it's important that you guys kind of see what I'm getting at here. So there is a way to fast rotate without actually going through the staircase here, which is really, really important that you kind of learn this, even though it's incredibly difficult. So let's see if I can nail this the first time. No, it's going to take me a few tries. You're really trying to just get on this high ground by taking a jump. Okay, this is really embarrassing. Okay, we got it on the fourth try. Honestly, just practicing this jump, I'm personally not too great at it because I haven't really learned this yet. But this jump here, what it'll allow you to do, if I can get up there again, is that it'll allow you actually to take this high ground relatively fast. The thing is, you are pretty exposed here, but if you do get really good at it with a looser speed, you probably could get away with it. It does allow you to get onto the scaffolding here, which is really advantageous because now they can't really get to here, but you can get to them. You can hit an aid behind them, go down on the stairs here, jump there, or you can jump up on this little wall as well. Being able to do that rotation very quickly is going to be very helpful, especially if they're not really expecting you to do that. Now, something that's a little bit more conventional, I mean, sure, you could play down here and just wait for your monkey to jump, but then you kind of lose it on, you miss out on a lot of damage there and a lot of opportunities to really carry. The other way that we did talk about was rotating through this right room here if you are on a more brawly composition. I still don't think it's super great, but I mean, it is an option, and it's something that you kind of have to think about if nothing else is working and mechanically your team just isn't getting enough out of that initial space that the Winston's giving, or if you have a Reinhardt. I think just if you have a Reinhardt and you're trying to play more rush style composition, rotating all the way right is just always the way to go every single time. And hey, look, it's the spray. And again, you can look to just support your front line here. You can be like, hey guys, just buy me some time. I'm going to go for this flank again. You just go up here, get a flank nade on them, and then your team can run through for free. One last thing that I do want to say is that if you do get run down, this isn't really necessarily a positioning thing, but this little door frame on this side here, if you do jump on this, you actually can jump up to this spot here and leave this room completely, as compared to actually taking that whole staircase thing. It's not like a whole lot of time that you really get away from there, but it could really mean the difference between life and death there, and I think it's important that people kind of understand that whole idea. The last thing that I do want to say though about second point is that Ana realistically will not be taking cart here. It'll probably be your Winston or Lucio because they're the fastest at getting into a fight if they need to. So ideally your monkey would probably be sitting on the cart here while you take an advantageous position up here for the first fight. If you do end up actually getting up here, if I can do it again, if you do actually end up getting up here, you can look to splash when the monkey jumps, and then once you win the fight, monkey gets back on cart, and you can take advantage of this high ground here, and if they do actually jump on you, you can then rotate away from them jumping on you, take the aggressive fight into their back line here, since your monkey will then be able to jump into their back line, and then their front line won't be able to jump on you. Hopefully that made sense. I'm trying to keep the video a little shorter, so if you had questions on what we just did and what we just went over, please let me know, and I'll answer your questions down below. And moving on to the last point of the day, we have attack on third point. It's pretty simple on attack as it is on defense, except you're adding this high ground into the mix, because getting this high ground over here early is very difficult, and the enemy team is probably going to have a pretty strong hold of this. The second high ground though, very strong. Like we said before, this little spot over here is not a smart place to hold if you are on defense, because it's very easy to poke out from pretty much everywhere, even though it's deceptively safe. Over here, it's a little harder to see because you need to rotate all the way over here, and even then, you're probably going to get shot by their entire team or dove upon before you can even get to this side, and it's just not as safe as being over here. So over on this side, you can force people out of this high ground here, take the fight here if the enemy decides to take it that close, which they really shouldn't. But I mean, this whole place, even if your enemy team does, if your team can push back the enemy team to this spot right here, it kind of opens up this high ground as you go. The thing that I just want to steer you guys away from is taking this side of the high ground right away. You got to make sure that your team actually pushes through so that the line of scrimmage kind of lets you rotate through to this space so that you're not just going to get dove on for free. If you do this too early, you will get dove on and you will die every single time. Now, moving on to the second high ground that you can take onto attack here, it's important to note that to get to that elevator room, you cannot just jump up here for free. Maybe you could if you have speed. I still don't think you could because speed doesn't affect jump height. And there's no real geometry to actually push you up to this little high ground here. So it's important that you understand that this high ground is valuable because of that. As a defender, you can't really get pushed on just by walking under you. You have to take a little bit of a longer route. That being said, if you do get the chance to take this on attack, it's not necessarily terrible, because like we said before, this spot here, you can headshot it on for free if you are a Widowmaker. But even if you're an Ana, I mean, being able to nade this over here, being able to take control of this area right here, so that the enemy can't just hit into your, go behind your Reinhardt if that's the tank you're on, or the Zarya that you're on. Being able to hold this little square here on a high ground like this is Ana is really, really nice. It also gives you some pretty good vantage point of the action here if your team is trying to be a little bit more aggressive. Again, it's not perfect, but third point is not really too much. There's not too many rat spots that you can use as Ana. But the last little point that I do want to stick on today, this part over here is very, very unsafe as Ana. I just want to put that out here. This is just like hardcore flanking because the enemy has spawned right there, and they're more inclined to actually take this side of the point when they are defending as opposed to that side. That being said, the reasoning why I'm really advocating for this next position is because it's pretty much opposite of that. Right here is a really, really strong spot because your entire team has a good vantage point of the fight going on here, and you have a good vantage point on healing them. You have very good line of sight pretty much across the board here against the enemy. Not to mention, they're probably going to patch this. I don't think there should be a Mega and a Mini right here. So you have a lot of regeneration. I mean, you have the regeneration from the health pack here, which is small, but you also have the Mega right here. Problem is, the reason why this is a Mega is that it's very difficult to get to this and just hold this position as Ana, because you're kind of just... the damage is just in your face, and it's very hard to maintain a good line of sight without putting yourself in danger. Meanwhile, if you do actually end up getting the chance to take this position here, the only way that they're really going to jump you is if your team has to rotate back, which they shouldn't if you're in this spot anyways, and they jump on you that way, or if maybe a Genji or Tracer takes the time to go all the way through train and hit you. And at that point, you should have aim trained enough in Vaxta and Overwatch 1, code plug, to actually just honestly just beam them down from here. I mean, these are really easy shots. It's not a whole lot of flicking that you have to do. It's just, you know, pretty simple shots. They pretty much have to walk in a straight line here. So if you get the opportunity to take the train here, I would say take it. Make sure that you're not too exposed here, especially over there, since that's a common spot for them to hold. But if you can't get there, you can play this little cover here, which also does have the Mega, which is really, really nice for you guys to use. And that just about wraps up today's video. If you did enjoy this content, please let me know by leaving a like and subscribing, as well as leaving a comment down below so I can really get a grasp for what you guys like and don't like. This was my first time doing a video with mostly face cam elements involved with it, so again, please let me know if you like this style of content. I'm more than willing to try new things. I hope this also helped you guys out think through Midtown from a top 500 perspective, as all we have right now on our hands is Quick Play Classic, and it kind of sucks. So, thank you guys so much for watching, but until next time, I've got to peace out, and pass out. See you in the next one.